All right, welcome back, everybody. It's good to be back with you. I have to say that time in Atlanta was really grand, and the city's great. But I'm glad to be back and getting back engaged with you guys. And I just shot you an email. I touched base with the this. I've had students ask me about a presentation. Uh, I was thinking about a presentation in one of my other classes where they have to present their articles and also present their papers. There is going to be a week here. You know, we've only got four weeks and 2 days before we end on November 26th. So coming up, there's going to be one week where I'm simply asking you to make a summation on the discussion board about give your title of your paper, and then give a short summation of what your paper is about or your findings, and so that other students can see what other students are doing on their in terms of their paper and paper topics. And so it's nothing really to worry about. If you'd like to go ahead and write down for yourself or a summation of your paper, your title, and summation of what the paper is about, or some findings, things that you found interesting along the way during your research on your paper. You can place it when I ask for it during that week. Each student will go on to the discussion board and create a thread for their paper topic and write up your summation. And basically, really the week is for that, but also gives you another open week to work further on your paper and also to start studying for your final exam. So it's killing two birds with one stone, if you will. But it's not a real big deal. Students may ask you a question or make a comment about your paper, and you can answer them. So there will be a little discussion on the paper topics for that particular week. But for this week, I just want to say a few things about, again, the timelines is most important for the final exam. And I'm going to give you a test review way earlier than usual for the final as we go ahead here, so you can start really focusing on the timeline. And but just for this past week, American Indian Societies, Native Americans, Chapter 7. Uh, Here are some things that's going to be on the exam for sure. You want to know some of the particulars on page 270, 278, American Indian cultures. Look over some of the various features of American Indian cultures. You want to look at what's the conditions for reservation life, and look at the role of the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the notion of paternalism. And make sure you touch base with that. But definitely on page 280, coercive acculturation and the Dawes Act in boarding schools. And definitely touch base with these. And I have a video on the boarding schools that I'll place for a video on the discussion board. But know about the Dawes Act. Again, it's the major governmental policies and the development of the social movements among the groups and their leaders. So the Dawes Act is very important in the boarding school system. Then the next important in the timeline is the Indian Reorganization Act, page 282. Make sure you touch base and know that. Then the next policy is on page 283 is determination policy. So be sure that you know. The thing is to know these, know their dates, know what they were about, and to be able to distinguish them one from the other. That's the main point for test questions. Then also look at relocation and urbanization. And then the movement towards self-determination among Native Americans on page 285, self-determination efforts. And he looks at the history of the early efforts towards Native American self-determination. And then in the 1960s, 1970s, on the heels of the civil rights movement, you had the development of the Red Power movement. So know the Red Power movement, what was their agenda, who were some of their main founders and leaders, and some of the events that took place. For example, the occupation at Wounded Knee. You're going to want to look at that. You had the development of the American Indian, Red Power, the American Indian movement, AIM. Was more of a militant wing of the Red Power movement. And so know something about their history, AIM, AIM, American Indian Movement. And then look again at some of the broken treaties on page 291. An area that I'm particularly interested in in terms of Native American contemporary Native Americans is gaming and other development possibilities. The issue of gaming, that was an issue that was taken up among the Lumbee here just recently with the possibility of a casino. And I've seen these casinos in two different Native cultures. One was an Aboriginal society in Canada when I was in Canada. The other was in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, with the Chippewas, and watched as these two impoverished communities suddenly became enriched through the development of casino, and how it really just transformed their lives, and also the communities, even for the white communities, because of that. The spread effect of these casinos was just enormous, and so I think it's a good area of study. In fact, that would have been a good paper for someone who's looking at gaming among Native Americans today, and the pros and cons. Certainly there's a lot of pros if done right, and but there's also some negative consequences as well, as it is with anything. And then finally, you want to look at the concepts, going back to our concept of assimilation and pluralism. To what extent are Native Americans acculturated, assimilated, and to what extent do they remain a plural culture? And let's see, make sure I've covered everything I want to for this chapter. Yeah, look at there's assimilation, primary, secondary structural assimilation. And and also it's good to compare on page 204, comparing minority groups, in which these concepts were presented in the first 5 chapters for comparative sake, historical comparative analyses. So make sure you read that part, comparing minority groups. And of course, then we've got our debate that I need to read what you guys have written there on our debate, our Indian sports team mascots offensive. So that's pretty much the timeline for the Native American chapter. So go ahead and get to know those. And this week we'll be starting with Hispanic Americans. And then after Hispanic Americans, the following week will be Hispanic Americans. And let me just see here for a second. So then we'll have Asian Americans, and then we're going to have that third week there. We're going to have have you put your presentation on your paper presentation on the discussion board. Again, also it gives you time to finish up your papers and to start studying for your final exam. Then we have one last chapter, chapter 11, for that 4th week, minority groups and U.S. society, themes, patterns, in the future. So when we get there, we'll cover that chapter. And just to wrap up the semester, I will say that your exam, just to give you a hint right now, and I'm not trying to discourage you from reading. I'm going to do a lecture on chapter 11 regardless. But most of your exam is going to come from the case studies. So African Americans, Native Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Asian Americans. chapters and timeline will be the exam. All right, so that's where we are for now. I'm going to go ahead and work on getting my video. I've got a problem with my video. It's been cutting off. I'm getting ready to cut off now because it cut off on me several times today in trying to do some other videos for other classes. But we will, I'll go ahead and place up for this coming week now today, starting today on Hispanic Americans. And put a video to it. I also want to put a video up about, if I can find it on YouTube, one that I really like for Native Americans in the boarding school system. And then we'll continue on. So if you've got any questions or concerns, again, that discussion on your paper topic is not going to be all that difficult to do. It's basically a summation of what your paper is about, your title, and then allowing other students, if they have a question about it or if they have a comment, they can make a comment. And then doing your study for your exam and finishing your paper that week. So everything looks good and we're on track. If you got any questions, shoot me an email. All right? Okay, so I'll talk to you later.